The first strange thing was not the deaths. Derry was used to deaths. Accidents, disappearances, quiet funerals that people attended out of habit rather than grief. Death had never been the problem here. The strange thing was that people stopped being afraid of them. When a man slipped on the ice behind the pharmacy and broke his neck, the crowd that gathered did not gasp. They nodded. Someone covered the body with a coat. Someone else called it unfortunate but expected. The word expected lingered in the air like a bad smell no one commented on. Children noticed it next. They were not braver. Bravery requires fear. They were calmer. When they scraped their knees, they did not cry. When they woke from bad dreams, they did not call for their parents. They lay still, staring at the ceiling, letting the feeling pass through them the way adults let a headache pass. Something had changed the rules. Pennywise felt it long before he understood it. Fear had always come to him raw, untreated. A scream, a racing heart, a moment when a child realized that the dark was not empty after all. That fear had flavor, texture. Panic and disbelief mixed together like sugar and blood. Now fear arrived, processed, came wrapped in explanation, in breathing techniques, in reassurances whispered by voices that were not there. That kind of fear did not scream. It waited. Pennywise did not like waiting. He tested the town gently at first. A reflection in a window that smiled when the person did not. A balloon drifting against the wind. A voice from a storm drain saying a name that had not been spoken aloud in years. People noticed. They paused. They adjusted. They moved on. The fear sparked, and then smoothed out, as if someone had pressed a hand over it. That was when Pennywise understood that something else was feeding here. He found her on a street that used to make children cry. The sidewalk was cracked. The houses leaned slightly inward, like they were listening. This had once been good ground. Old ground. The kind of place where imaginations ran hot and parents locked their doors a little too late. She walked there openly. A woman in a neat coat.
Sensible hot.
An umbrella carried though the sky was clear. She walked as if gravity had agreed to behave around her. Pennywise appeared beside her without theatrics. "That's not necessary," she said calmly, without looking at him. He smiled anyway. "You know who I am," he said. "Yes." "And you still here?" "Yes." That irritated him more than fear ever had. "You reorganizing them," he said. "Sorting things that should not be sorted." She stopped walking and turned to him. Her face was pleasant. Not beautiful. Not empty. Pleasant in the way a well-run institution is pleasant. "I am helping them cope," she said. He laughed softly. "Cope is just fear with manners." She considered that. "Fear is inefficient," she said. "Left alone, it causes damage." "That damage is the point," Pennywise replied. "That's how they change." "They do not need to change," she said. "They need to function." There it was. Function. A word Pennywise had never liked. "You not from here," he said. "Neither are you." "But I belong here," he said. "You revisiting." She smiled. "So are colds," she said. "So are fires. Duration does not imply ownership." That was when Pennywise realized what she was. Not a savior. Not a rival. A regulator. She was not removing fear. She was converting it. Teaching people how to store it. How to live with it quietly, without letting it spill into imagination or panic. Fear with a lid. That kind of fear did not feed him immediately. But it aged. And aged fear, Pennywise knew, could become something exquisite. Children began talking about her openly. The lady with the umbrella. The one who taught them songs that had no melodies they could remember later. The one who explained nightmares as maintenance issues. The one who said monsters were real but manageable. That last part made Pennywise pause. He found a boy sitting on the curb outside his house late one evening. "You know about monsters?" Pennywise asked, appearing as a shadow that bent the streetlight. The boy nodded. "She says monsters exist to keep things balanced," the boy said. "Like pressure valves." "And what about me?" Pennywise asked. The boy thought. "You a big one," he said. But you re not the worst. That was the first time in a very long time that Pennywise felt something close to offense. He found her again underground, where explanations tended to unravel. You re-teaching them to live with me, he said. Yes. You re-teaching them to accept me. Yes. That's not help, Pennywise said. That's preparation. Her smile did not fade. Everything is preparation, she said. Even you. That was when Pennywise decided she had misunderstood something fundamental. Fear did not belong to people. People borrowed it. Fear belonged to him. And Mary Poppins, because that was the name she was using, though it was not her first and would not be her last, had made herself part of the supply chain, which meant she could be consumed. Not violently, not dramatically, but completely. Mary Poppins began to stay longer. At first, she had appeared and disappeared the way helpful things do, quietly, without demanding credit. Now she lingered. She attended school meetings. She stood at bus stops. She walked children home even when they insisted they did not need it. And still, no one questioned her. That was the real change. Derry had always been suspicious. It distrusted outsiders, distrusted kindness, distrusted anything that arrived without a history. But Mary Poppins slipped past that instinct like water through a crack. People remembered her being there longer than she actually had. They invented past interactions to justify her presence. Oh, she helped my sister once, someone would say. I think she lived here years ago, another would add. Memory bent around her. Pennywise watched this with a mixture of admiration and irritation. You rewriting them, he told her one evening, when she stood on the edge of the barrens, umbrella resting against her shoulder. I am reorganizing, she said. Memories are cluttered. Fear makes them worse. Fear makes them honest, Pennywise replied. She glanced at him, then looked away again. Honesty is overrated, she said. Stability lasts longer. Below them, the water barely moved. No ripples. No insects skimming the surface. The barrens had always been a place where things wriggled, where unseen life pressed up against the edges of perception. Now it felt sealed. You know what they used to do down there, Pennywise said conversationally. They imagined. Yes. They invented me. She nodded. And now, he asked, they process you. That word again. Process. Pennywise let his smile stretch wider than his face should allow. Careful, he said softly. Processed fear does not disappear. No, she agreed. It accumulates. That made him pause. You know that. Of course. So you know what happens when accumulation reaches capacity. She turned to him then. For the first time, something like curiosity crossed her face. You think they break, she said. They always do, Pennywise replied. The question is how cleanly. Mary Poppins considered this. You assume I am afraid of that, she said. Are not you? Pennywise asked. No, she said. Breakage is inevitable. I am only changing the shape of it. That was when Pennywise realized the truth. Mary Poppins was not naive. She was not blind to consequence. She was gambling. The town changed faster after that. Children stopped asking why. Not just about monsters, but about everything. Why the sky was blue. Why people died. Why things hurt. They accepted answers the way one accepts weather reports. That was new. Fear had always driven curiosity. Curiosity led to imagination. Imagination led to panic or courage. Now the chain was broken. Pennywise tested it directly. He approached a girl walking home at dusk. He chose a simple shape. A man standing too still beneath a streetlight. She noticed him. Her heart rate increased. Pennywise felt it. Yes, he thought. She stopped. She breathed in. Slowly. Deeply. It's okay, she whispered to herself. This is just a response. Pennywise felt the fear settle, not vanish. Contained. She walked past him. She did not run. She did not scream. She did not imagine what he might do. And that, Pennywise realized, was the real theft. Mary Poppins had not taken fear. She had taken imagination. That night, Pennywise appeared to her without warning, without disguise. His shape was wrong, tall, angled, too many joints bending where they should not. His smile showed everything. "You re-cutting them off from the good parts," he said. She did not step back. "Define good," she said. "The part where they invent me," he said. "The part where fear turns into stories." "Stories are inefficient," she replied. "They escalate. They evolve," Pennywise said. "So do I." She tilted her head. "You think this is about you." "It always is," Pennywise said cheerfully. She sighed, and for the first time she looked tired. "I am preventing collapse," she said. "This town has been cycling through trauma for too long. You burn it down. It rebuilds. You burn it again. And every time," Pennywise said, "something new crawls out of the ashes. Or something broken," she countered. They stood in silence. Finally, Pennywise said, "You not here to stop me." "No. You here to change what I eat." "Yes." That was the most honest moment they had shared. Pennywise laughed. "That's ambitious." "I am very good at my job," she said. "You very edible," Pennywise replied. She smiled politely. "You would not," she said. That amused him. "Oh," Pennywise said, voice dropping, becoming something older, heavier. "I will. You just made yourself ripe." She looked at him carefully. "Then do it," she said. "But understand this. If you consume me, you consume what I built." "I know," Pennywise said. "That's why I am hungry." The first cracks appeared a week later. Not in behavior. In silence. People began pausing mid-sentence, forgetting what emotion they were supposed to be having. Children stared at walls longer than necessary. Adults woke up with clenched jaws and no dreams to explain why. Fear pressed outward. Mary Poppins noticed. She worked harder, stayed longer, repeated lessons, reinforced routines. But pressure does not respond to repetition. It responds to release. Pennywise waited. He always did. The first failure was small enough that no one reported it. A boy in Derry Elementary raised his hand during a lesson about weather patterns. The teacher called on him. The boy opened his mouth and nothing came out. Not silence. Confusion. He frowned, lowered his hand, then raised it again, as if rebooting himself. "What were you going to ask?" the teacher prompted gently. The boy's eyes filled with something that was not fear and not calm. "I do not know," he said. That should have been impossible. Questions do not vanish once formed. They either get answered or they grow teeth. Mary Poppins heard about it anyway. She always did. She visited the classroom that afternoon, spoke to the children in her measured voice, had them close their eyes, breathe, imagine shelves being tidied. Pennywise watched from the far corner of the room, invisible except to the parts of the mind that still twitched when danger was nearby. He could taste it now. Fear, compressed too long, does not evaporate. It ferments. The children followed her instructions perfectly. Their breathing synchronized. Their shoulders relaxed. The air smoothed out, and beneath it the pressure climbed. Mary Poppins felt it for the first time that evening. Alone in the small rented house she had been using. Came as a headache at first, then as a strange resistance like trying to walk through water that pretended to be air. She opened her umbrella indoors. That too was new. "You late," Pennywise said, appearing in the doorway without disturbing it. "I've been busy," she said. Her voice was steady, but her hand tightened on the handle. "Yes," he said. "You've been reinforcing." She turned to face him. "This was never going to be permanent," she said. "You know that." "But you stayed," Pennywise replied. "That's the part you forgot. I stayed because they needed me. You stayed because you enjoyed being necessary." That struck closer than she liked. She smoothed her coat. "You misunderstand me," she said. "I do not need their affection." "No," Pennywise agreed. "You need their dependence." His smile widened, but there was no humor in it now. "You taught them how to live with me," he continued. But you never taught them how to imagine me. That was intentional, she said sharply. Imagination is destabilizing. Imagination is the only escape hatch they ever had, Pennywise said. From you and from me. Her eyes flicked toward the window. Outside, the street was perfectly still. No wind.
No dogs. No distant sirens.
You losing control, Pennywise said gently. I do not lose control, she replied. You redistribute it, he corrected. And redistribution always creates surplus. She said nothing. He stepped closer. Do you know what happens to fear when it has nowhere to go? He asked. She met his gaze. It turns inward, she said. It becomes manageable. It turns into structure, Pennywise said. Belief systems, habits, obedience. She hesitated. And then, he continued, it turns into me. The first incident made the news. A woman stood up in a grocery store aisle and began screaming. Not at anything visible. Not incoherently. She screamed in complete sentences. I do not know what I am supposed to feel, she yelled. Tell me what this means. No one helped her. They waited. Mary Poppins arrived 15 minutes later. Too late. The woman had collapsed from exhaustion. Not hysteria. Exhaustion. You re-accelerating it, Mary said to Pennywise that night, when they stood near the sewer entrance that had once been his favorite door. I am letting it breathe, he said. This will hurt them, she said. Yes, Pennywise replied. That's how you know it's real. She stared down into the darkness. You could help me stabilize it, she said. Together. That surprised him. You want a partnership, he said. I want containment, she said. You want to put a lid back on, Pennywise said. After it's already boiling. I can still manage it. He laughed then, loudly, joyfully. Oh, he said. You still think this is your system. She stiffened. You taught them to live with fear, Pennywise said. You made it part of them. Internal. Constant. He leaned close. You made them into perfect vessels. She stepped back. That was not my intent. Intent is irrelevant, Pennywise said. Outcome is everything. Outside, somewhere in Derry, a child laughed suddenly and then stopped, confused by the sound. Pennywise straightened. You feel it now, do not you? He asked. The hunger. She did. Not physical hunger. Something worse. Relevance. If fear no longer needed soothing, what was she? You can still leave, Pennywise said. Before it finishes. She shook her head slowly. If I leave, she said. They'll break. They going to break anyway, Pennywise replied. The only question is whether they break clean, or whether they break into me. Her grip tightened on the umbrella until her knuckles whitened. You think you'll survive this, she said. I always do, Pennywise replied. That's the difference between us. The pressure reached threshold 2 nights later. That was when Pennywise stopped waiting. Threshold was not a sound. It was a sensation, shared but unspoken. Like the moment before a storm when the air forgets how to move. People in Derry woke up that morning already tired. Not physically. Something deeper. As if they had spent the night holding something heavy just out of sight. Conversations stalled. Hands trembled for no obvious reason. Children stopped humming. Mary Poppins felt it immediately. Her routines no longer settled the air. Breathing exercises stalled halfway through. Reassurances slid off people instead of sinking in. Fear was no longer responding to instruction. It had learned too much. She stood in a living room where a family sat quietly on a couch, staring straight ahead. Tell me what you feeling, she said gently. They looked at her. They waited. That was when she understood. They were no longer feeling on their own. They were waiting to be told what feeling applied. Mary Poppins stepped back. Outside, the sky darkened without clouds. Pennywise stood at the edge of the street, no longer bothering with disguise. His shape bent reality around it not aggressively but confidently, like something that knew it had already won a long argument. You feel it, he said. She did not deny it. This was never meant to reach this stage, she said. And yet, Pennywise replied. You stayed long enough to see it through. You pushed it, she said. I harvested, he corrected. You cultivated. She looked at the houses, at the people inside them, sitting quietly, waiting for cues that were no longer coming. They do not imagine anymore, she said. They do not externalize. They do not project. No, Pennywise said. They internalized perfectly. His voice softened. You taught them to keep fear inside, he continued. To manage it. To normalize it. He leaned closer. You taught them to marinate. Mary Poppins closed her eyes. For the first time since she had arrived in Derry, she felt something like regret. This will destroy them, she said. No, Pennywise replied. This will finalize them. She opened her eyes. And what about you? She asked. What happens when you eat something like me? That made him pause. It was a fair question. You not just comfort, he said slowly. You restructure, control, inhibition. And if you absorb that, she said, you change. Yes, Pennywise agreed. That's the point. She straightened. You become something worse. His smile returned, wider than ever. There is no worse, he said. Only fuller. The first collapse happened that afternoon. A man stood up in the middle of a town meeting and began describing his fear in precise clinical terms. No metaphors. No symbols. Just raw inventory. Heart rate. Muscle tension. Anticipation of loss. As he spoke, Pennywise felt it flow outward. Not explosively. Deliberately. People listened. Something inside them recognized the pattern. Fear, released from containment, does not scatter. Congregates. Mary Poppins moved through the crowd, trying to reassert order, but the mechanisms no longer obeyed. Her words slid off. Her presence failed to anchor. She realized then what she had misunderstood. Fear did not belong to her to manage. And it never belonged to the people either. That night, Pennywise came for her. Not in anger. Not in hunger. In certainty. They met underground, where the town's oldest structures intersected. Pipes, tunnels, forgotten service corridors that had outlived their original purpose. Mary Poppins stood waiting. I will not fight you, she said. I know, Pennywise replied. You'll destroy what I am, she said. No, Pennywise said. I'll preserve it. She frowned. You do not preserve, she said. I do, he replied. I preserve what feeds me. She looked at him carefully. You not consuming me, she said. You reintegrating me. Yes. And once you do, she said, there will be no counterbalance. Pennywise tilted his head. There never was, he said. Only delays. She took a breath. Then do it, she said. But understand this, comfort without fear was dangerous. Fear without comfort will be catastrophic. Pennywise stepped closer. Catastrophic is just another word for memorable, he said. The act itself was not violent. There were no screams. Mary Poppins felt herself dissolve, not physically, but conceptually. Her rules, her structures, her calming frameworks were pulled apart and absorbed, like instructions being rewritten into a deeper language. Pennywise did not devour her shape. He devoured her function. When it was over, she was gone. Not destroyed, rendered obsolete. Pennywise stood alone in the dark, feeling something new settle into him. Restraint. Structure. He laughed, and the sound echoed longer than it should have. The town reacted slowly. Fear returned, but it returned educated. It did not explode. It organized. People felt it clearly now. Fully. Without filters. And because they had lived so long suppressing it, they did not flee. They endured. Pennywise felt it everywhere. Fear now deep, mature, disciplined. Perfect. Derry did not collapse. It hardened. Children grew up attentive. Adults grew careful. Nobody looked away anymore. And Pennywise, no longer just a predator, no longer just a terror, became something else.
À permanent futur.
A boundary condition. The change did not announce itself. That was the most unsettling part. No mass panic. No sudden violence. No fires. No blood. No screaming sirens cutting through the night. Derry had already learned how to live without those things. What followed Mary Poppins' disappearance was quieter, heavier, and far more permanent. People began to notice that fear no longer asked permission. It did not knock. It did not spike and retreat. It simply arrived and stayed, settling into the body like a second skeleton. Not overwhelming, never overwhelming, but constant. A low, intelligent pressure that made every decision feel weighted. People chose their words carefully now. Not out of politeness, but out of calculation. They crossed streets with perfect timing. They locked doors even when home. They watched one another with a calm attentiveness that had nothing to do with trust. Pennywise felt it all. He no longer needed to appear often. Fear carried him. It moved through people with his cadence, his patience, his newly acquired restraint. Mary had given him that structure. Before, fear had been loud, wasteful. It burned hot and fast, leaving nothing behind but trauma and forgetting. Now it aged. Now it layered. Now it stayed. Pennywise discovered that he could speak less and be heard more. When he did appear, it was rarely to children. Children adapt too easily. It was adults who fascinated him now, adults who had lived through containment and emerged sharpened by it. He appeared to a man sitting alone in his car one evening, hands resting on the steering wheel long after the engine had stopped. "You know I am here," Pennywise said. The man nodded without looking up. "Yes. Are not you afraid?" Pennywise asked, curious. The man considered. "I am," he said. "But it does not change anything." Pennywise smiled. That response would have bored him once. Now it thrilled him. Fear had become existential rather than reactive. Not a response to danger, but a condition of awareness. People no longer imagined monsters in the dark. They imagined consequences. They imagined permanence. And imagination, once refined, is far more dangerous than panic. The macro-universe noticed, not as an intelligence, not as a consciousness, but as a shift in balance. Where once there had been oscillation, terror followed by relief, collapse followed by repair, there was now continuity. Fear no longer required external stimulation. It was self-sustaining. Pennywise had become unnecessary in the way gravity is unnecessary. He remained, but not as an actor, as a law. Mary Poppins' absence created no vacuum. That, too, was her final miscalculation. Comfort had not been a counterweight, it had been a buffer. Once removed, fear no longer sought soothing. It simply incorporated the absence. Somewhere beyond Derry, other systems adjusted. Cities that had never known Pennywise felt a subtle tightening. Children elsewhere asked fewer questions. Adults grew more precise in their anxieties. Nightmares simplified, losing symbols and gaining certainty. Pennywise felt his influence stretch, not actively, not hungrily, but inevitably. He spoke to himself then, something he had not done in centuries. "She thought she was protecting them," he said softly. The dark did not answer. "She thought comfort was mercy." Still nothing. Pennywise laughed, a sound that barely existed. "Comfort is delay," he said. "Fear is instruction." He remembered her last moment. Not her face, but her understanding. The instant she realized she had not been consumed as an enemy, but as an ingredient. That pleased him. In Derry, a child stood at a window late one night, looking out at a street that felt too clear, too sharp. The child did not call for anyone. The child did not breathe slowly. The child simply watched and thought, for the first time without guidance. Something inside the child unfolded. Not terror, not comfort, awareness. Pennywise felt it and paused. That was new. Not fear shaped by him. Not fear shaped by her. Something adjacent. Something that did not need either of them. For the first time since consuming Mary Poppins, Pennywise felt something unfamiliar. Not hunger. Not satisfaction. Uncertainty. The macro-universe shifted again, imperceptibly, as systems always do when a dominant force overstays its relevance. Pennywise remained powerful,
First.
integrated. But somewhere, quietly, something had begun to form that did not require fear at all. Pennywise did not notice the change at first because it did not announce itself as rebellion. There were no screams that failed to reach him, no prayers that went unanswered, no sudden absence of fear that would have signaled competition. Fear was still there, deep, mature, obedient in its way. But something had begun to sit beside it. He sensed it in the pauses. A woman stood at a crosswalk long after the light had changed. Not frozen, not afraid. Simply considering. A man woke from a dreamless sleep and did not catalog his anxiety. He just lay there, feeling the weight of existence without immediately translating it into dread. These moments did not feed Pennywise. They did not resist him either. They bypassed him. That was the problem. He appeared to the child he had watched weeks before, the one who stared out the window too long. "You feel it, do not you?" Pennywise asked, letting his voice curl softly around the edges of the room. The child nodded. "Are you afraid?" Pennywise asked. The child thought. "Yes," the child said. "But I do not think it's about you." That answer landed heavier than any scream ever had. Pennywise smiled, automatically at first, then more slowly. "That's a mistake," he said. "Maybe," the child replied. "But I do not need it to be anything else yet." Need. That word had shifted meanings so many times. Pennywise withdrew. He began to observe more carefully. What he saw unsettled him. People were no longer narrating their fear internally. They were no longer asking what it meant, where it came from, or how to manage it. Fear existed, yes, but it was no longer the axis around which identity formed. Mary Poppins had taught them containment. Pennywise had taught them endurance. Together, they had taught something neither of them had intended. Self-reference. Fear without storytelling eventually becomes background radiation. And background radiation stops being worshipped. In the macro-universe, systems adjusted again. Entities like Pennywise do not die. They persist until relevance erodes. Until the conditions that require them shift just enough. He felt it not as weakness, not as hunger, but as a subtle decentering. Fear still flowed through him, but it did not terminate there. Pass through unchanged. That had never happened before. He remembered Mary Poppins' last understanding. Not fear, not anger, but clarity. She had been wrong about comfort. He had been wrong about fear. Both were scaffolding. Temporary. Pennywise appeared one last time in Derry, not as a clown, not as a monster, but as a suggestion at the edge of thought. No one screamed. No one ran. A few people noticed and kept going. That was when Pennywise understood the final truth. He had eaten Mary Poppins and become complete. And in doing so, he had made himself unnecessary. Fear remained, but it no longer needed a face. In the macro-universe, something old receded, not destroyed, not defeated, but archived. Like a tool that had taught its final lesson. If Pennywise still exists, and he does, it is not as a hunter waiting in the dark. He is a remembered boundary. A story people no longer need to tell themselves in order to survive. And that is the most frightening ending of all.